we go. All right. So how do I pronounce your name? Vikram?
Yes.
Vikram. Okay, Vikram, thank you so much for sitting with me this
Yeah,
afternoon.
of course.
Super interesting information that you're putting out there. I know that a lot of people struggle with cigarettes, and smoking and quitting smoking and the powers of the addiction to nicotine. And now they're switching over to vaping. And, there's a lot of negative, you know, journals about, that vaping is even worse than cigarettes at this
Mm.
point. So it's like, what do? You got to quit, right? You can't do it. That's the bottom line. So let me give you a brief introduction here. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Bear Experiment podcast. I'm your host, Monica Clavijo, and today we're diving into a topic that could literally save your lives: how to quit smoking for good without patches, gum, or struggle, using nothing but the power of your own mind. Now, my guest today is Vikram Mano, a certified hypnotherapist who has helped thousands of people break free from cigarettes by rewiring their brains through hypnosis. No gimmicks, no withdrawals, just lasting freedom from addiction. Now, in this episode, we're breaking down how cravings work, the emotional triggers that keep you lighting up, and why you're not actually addicted to all 20 cigarettes in the pack, just a few crucial ones. Now, we'll bust the biggest myths about smoking, talk about the shocking financial cost of this habit, and reveal how hypnosis can tap into your subconscious, reprogram your desire to smoke forever. Now, if you've ever said, I want to quit, but can't, this episode is for you. So please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the notification bell so that you never miss our amazing episode with our amazing guests that are here to help you and help elevate you. Now, let's dive in. So, welcome, 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 Vikram. Thanks
Thanks.
again.
Yeah.
So let's start off with that you say that people aren't hooked to all 40 cigarettes, or to 40 cigarettes a day, or to the pack. The pack brings 20, right? So, why is it that you say that they're not addicted to the entire pack, but they'll smoke the whole thing? What's the concept behind that? Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think it's that most smokers will agree that many cigarettes that they smoke actually fly under the radar, as in they do it just automatically out of habit. But they're not really bringing that much pleasure, right? Or they're not even being noticed that much. They're just being smoked in the same way maybe somebody might unconsciously be biting their nails or not even be realizing that they're doing that. So the cigarettes that most people actually savor are the one obvious, oftentimes with the morning cigarette, or it could be the one after they get up in the morning or after a meal, specific meal. Those are the ones that they actually sit down and quote unquote enjoy. But the rest 20, right, if they're a pack a day smoker, they're not even noticing. They're just kind of doing it just out of habit.
Because we go back at the end, what's really happening there with your mind, it's a habit that you're developing. I'm having
Yeah.
coffee in the morning and I need to light a cigarette because it just goes hand in hand. It's not
Right.
necessarily that I have an addiction to the nicotine or the cigarette. It's just a habit,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how is smoking a bonds game? What does that mean?
Sorry, smoking is a what
A,
game?
a bond game. You talk about it being a bond game that people associate each other and they bond together when they smoke.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so smoking is much more about association than it is about nicotine, right? And you could easily see this if anybody has been on a flight for 12 or 14 hours.
Hmm.
They just get on the flight, and because people don't smoke cigarettes on flights anymore, they don't really have any cravings on the flight, right? If any craving comes up, it might be a little bit of craving because they're feeling bored or whatever. But really, they can get on a flight for 12 to 14 hours and not really have much of a craving. People say nicotine is as powerful as heroin. Let's see a heroin addict sit on a plane for 14 hours versus someone sitting right next to them who's addicted to, quote unquote, addicted to smoking. The heroin addict is breaking out in cold sweats and shaking and vomiting because of withdrawals, but the
True.
smoker is not doing anything like that whatsoever, right? They're just kind of hanging out. So to compare nicotine in its intensity to heroin in terms of its addiction potential is not even close.
Yeah. What are the three biggest myths about smoking that you wish that everyone knew?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, Number one, people think that smoking helps with reducing stress. People
Hmm.
often associate smoking with stress reduction, or they smoke to relax, quote unquote. But nicotine actually increases adrenaline within just a few seconds,
Absolutely,
right?
100%.
Right. So if nicotine's increasing adrenaline, how could anybody be relaxing when they're smoking? It doesn't make any sense. Adrenaline is this fight or flight hormone. So in reality, what's actually helping people relax is the break. Everybody needs to take a break throughout the
Hmm.
day, right? So they associate smoking with taking a break. But billions of people around the world take breaks without needing to smoke. You don't need to smoke to take a break, right? Or it's a way that people breathe, right? So when you're smoking a cigarette, you breathe out slowly and smoothly. That is a very calm way of breathing, right? So nicotine, or rather cigarettes, they trick people into thinking that it's the cigarette that's helping them relax, but in reality, it's the break and it's the breathing pattern that's relaxing.
So, in essence, if you're feeling anxiety or triggered by something that's happening at the moment and you need to release, you could go outside and just, take deep breaths, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that'll have the same effect eventually once that craving wears off or that trigger wears off, right?
Right, right. Well, whatever it is that's stressing you out, you can go outside, take a break from the situation, and take a nice deep breath. And reality, when you do that, you're not fighting against nicotine trying to increase adrenaline. So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So it's actually a much easier way of relaxing than trying to relax using cigarettes.
How long do the cigarette cravings actually last on somebody that's trying to break that cycle?
Yeah, oftentimes just a few minutes, right? So just a few minutes and the craving's actually gone as long as you're either distracting yourself or you're taking deep breaths or you're doing other craving handling techniques that I teach my clients. Then cravings don't last a very long time. The thing is, when these urges come to do anything like that, right? An urge to smoke a cigarette, it actually comes up like a wave and then it'll fade away very
Right,
quickly.
right.
At the tip of the wave, it feels like it's never going to end, but if you just ride it out, it goes away very quickly.
Yeah. And what are based on your studies and with your patients, what are some of the top three triggers that most smokers associate with having to light up?
Stress, for sure.
Yeah.
With specific times during the day, like coffee, like after meals, first thing in the morning, drinking alcohol. There's several common ones that play a role.
Yeah, drinking alcohol is a big one. That was actually the next question that I wanted to talk to you about because
Yeah.
I know that, with all the dangers with cigarettes, people are not lighting up as much as they used to in the past, but it very much goes hand in hand, right? You go out to a nightclub or you're hanging out with friends, you're having a
For sure.
cocktail, a cigarette is usually associated with it. It was just
Yeah.
like, one goes with the other. So what tips do you have where you can break that link, because at that point you're having a cocktail, you're loosening up, you lose
Hmm.
control of your inhibitions a little bit,
For
somebody
sure.
offers you a cigarette, how do you say no? No, I'm past the stage.
Well, it becomes, I mean, like you said, alcohol is very interesting because obviously it reduces inhibition. It becomes harder to say no. So I would say that making a plan before you even get to
Right.
that situation. So if you're hanging out with people who don't smoke, then have them hold you somewhat accountable could be a part of your plan. That being said, it's not like it's impossible. I've actually worked with clients who often associated smoking with drinking alcohol. And when we did the more deeper inner work, then that link was broken at a sort of unconscious level. So it's not impossible. It's just that coming up with a plan and rather working at a deep level, at an unconscious level to break the link between alcohol and smoking. So there's specific, more hypnotic techniques that I use with my clients.
Right. That's
However,
where
yeah,
And that's where you come in, right? Where we're going in a
exactly.
little deeper then in order to, yeah, because right, correct. You have a game plan going. You say we're going out tonight. I'm not smoking. I'm not doing that anymore. But at that moment, there's everybody's doing it. What the heck? Let me just have
Mhm.
one. One turns to two, and then you kick that craving going again and again and again.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, there's one thing that you talk about in your content with your education about the 10-year experiment.
Mm.
What did that reveal?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think back. I produce a lot of content. So in terms of like 10 year, I think you're talking about like kind of thinking about yourself 10 years in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Right, absolutely.
The
So
danger, in other words, the dangers, if you continue to smoke, what would your life look in 10 years as opposed to you
yeah,
quitting, the reverse effects of quitting smoking and how you
yeah.
see those immediate results in your lungs almost, right? Like right away.
Yeah, yeah,
It's,
yeah, very
yeah.
quickly. Yeah, you start seeing changes happen very quickly. It's actually fascinating how quickly the body can start to heal. But basically, and this is actually a very important point, is that cigarettes actually trick people into only thinking about handling the craving right now, right? So then, in a sense, they lock people into the present moment. And when you're locked into the present moment, you stop thinking about, what can go wrong if you keep engaging in that behavior, right? So
Right.
if somebody smokes one cigarette, nothing's really going to happen. But if somebody smokes one cigarette 1 million times, that's not one cigarette, that's 1 million cigarettes,
Right.
right?
Right.
In their mind, it's just one cigarette at a time. So when we talk about the 10-year sort of experiment, what we need to do, what I need to do as a therapist and what the client needs to do is realize what would happen if they continue their behavior long term, right? So what does your future look like if you continue saying yes to cigarettes as opposed to when you start saying no?
Okay. With the counseling that you do with your hypnotherapy,
Mhm.
is the way that that operates where you're almost like a therapist at first and a person goes in there and they speak with you, they tell you kind of like their problems and what they're feeling, the triggers, and then based on that, then you figure out a hypnosis plan that would best, be effective for them with their level
Yeah,
of addiction?
right. In a sense that, first, obviously, I want to know what the situation is, how long they've been smoking, how much they smoke in a day, have they tried quitting before, how long have they quit in the past if they have. I want to know all those details. Is very important for me.
Mhm.
But then after that, there are obviously some things that need to be tailored to the client. However, there are also sort of set patterns that work basically for everybody. So it's kind of a combination of using set patterns and tailoring it to the individual's specific triggers and situations.
I've read a lot of rewarding feedback of with hypnosis and not
Yeah.
just, cigarette smoking with addiction in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very effective. How long does the nicotine stay in your bloodstream after someone quits?
Yeah. 48 hours to 72 hours is
Oh,
out of
so
the
it's
system.
quick.
Yeah.
And you start feeling, I would imagine, those benefits immediately once that
Yeah.
nicotine leaves your bloodstream. But I've also read that nicotine is an enhancer where it helps you focus and it gives you energy, right?
Yeah.
So is a little bit of nicotine okay? Maybe not in a cigarette form, but maybe with a pill, where it can help,
Yeah.
yeah, elevated states of focusness and you need a little, pick me up. Okay,
Yeah.
let's take a nicotine pill here or have a cigarette. Maybe not a
I,
cigarette, but you know what I mean.
yeah, definitely not a cigarette. But nicotine in and of itself, I have like not a huge problem with as just a straight chemical because at a low dose it can enhance the concentration if it's taken in something like a pill form or like a tablet or something like that. However, it does increase blood pressure, so you have to be careful about that. It does increase heart rate, and does sort of constrict blood vessels in different areas of the body. It's cigarettes, when you burn the tobacco, it starts to form tar and all these like disturbing, I'm talking about thousands of chemicals get stuck to the tar, which then coat your lungs. And that's really why cigarettes are really, really dangerous. I mean, the people don't really realize yeah, this is almost across the board. Every time I work with a client, I talk about how, I start breaking myths, breaking beliefs. Or one of the first things I do is start talking about beliefs around cigarette smoking. Some people believe that, like I can die from anything, so I might as well smoke, right? I can die. I can be hit by a car walking down the street, so I might as
Yeah,
well
you can
smoke,
die in your
right?
sleep.
Die in your sleep. You can die from anything, right? Might as well
Mhm.
smoke. But people that talk like that don't understand probability. They are very naive, and they don't know anything about the real probability about the situation. For example, being hit by a car as a pedestrian the chance of that is 1 in 15,000 to 1 in 20,000. But the chance of dying from a smoking related disease as a smoker is 1 in 2.
Right.
So we have 1 in 15,000 versus 1 in 2, right? So the probability is not really the same.
Yeah, and so much has come out, right, since the 1950s. I mean, I remember when I was in my 20s getting on an airplane and they would send you to the back of the plane if you wanted to drink and smoke back there, and it was a big party plane and everybody's just lighting up and
Yeah.
now you can't even have a cigarette in a smoking section in a restaurant anymore.
Right.
Like, it's really coming out how horrible it really is.
Um,
Okay, so let's get into hypnosis a little bit because I love that
sure.
part. So what exactly how exactly does hypnosis help with somebody quitting smoking?
Yeah. So as mentioned before, cigarettes are, people start forming habits over time for who knows, decades at a time, where they keep repeating the same behavior over and over again to the point where it starts to become unconscious, right? People will be smoking and on their phone, they're not even thinking about it, right? They're just engaging in the behavior at an unconscious automatic level. So we need something that can work at that level, at the level of the unconscious, because it's such an automatic thing. So people try to quit using willpower, but that's just using your conscious mind to try to quit, right? So imagine trying not to think about a pink elephant. What happens?
Right, right.
You
Um,
start, yeah.
right, yeah.
So trying not to quit, trying not to smoke all the time is like what ends up happening is you start thinking about smoking all the
Yeah,
time. So
right.
you need a
It's
tool that
present.
works.
It's just there the entire time the more you're trying not to think about it.
Exactly. So we need a tool that works at the unconscious level.
What are what exactly happens to the brain during hypnosis?
That is a complicated question because the brain science is, I mean, from what I know, I actually, I mean, I'm rereading the basically the seminal work on the science of clinical hypnosis called trance work. I actually have it here. So
Okay.
this is the sixth edition. I had the fourth one, but I gave it to a friend. The brain science is very complicated. It gets messy because when you start doing fMRI studies there's no special state of mind that we can sort of identify with brain science that isn't that sort of signals something very specifically different is going on, right? It's when you put somebody on an fMRI and you start to analyze themselves in a hypnotic state, it doesn't seem like from my understanding as of right this moment, we have no way of distinguishing hypnosis as a specific state of mind using brain science. So this it starts getting a little bit more complicated.
In essence, it's like putting somebody in a trance, right? And in an enlightened focus, a state of maybe susceptibility. Is that what it is?
I mean, for sure, there's a heightened state of focus involved in hypnosis, and trance and hypnosis goes hand in hand. And But you don't need to be in a special state of mind to focus you know what I mean? Like you don't need to be in a hypnotic state in order for your mind to be hyper focused on any specific ideas. Like basically the hypnosis is a focused state of attention locked into a specific idea,
Or a
right?
problem or right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it can be a problem. So in a sense, depression is a state of hypnosis or in a state of trance because the person is so locked into that
Oh.
negative worldview that in a sense they're in a state of trance as well. It's just not a very good one, right? So when I mentioned that cigarettes trick people into hyper focusing only on dealing with that craving, in a sense, cigarettes are pulling their attention almost like a trance. But again, it's not a very good trance. So
Hmm.
hypnosis, when we use hypnosis, we're using it in a healthy way so that they can start to change their negative state of mind into a more positive state of mind.
Right.
But when you start talking about the brain science, it gets kind of tricky because, brain science is relatively new.
Well, it's
So
just I think that also a stigma associated with hypnosis
mm,
is, there's a fear behind it. Like, what
yeah,
about if I stay in the state
mm,
of trans, or whatever happens? You go to another dimension. Whatever
right,
happens to your brain scientifically at that
yeah,
point, a lot of people are afraid of hypnosis.
for
So,
sure.
can a person that is afraid of being hypnotized, do you still have the capabilities of hypnotizing somebody that is afraid of it?
Yeah, I think that it would have to do with a lot of just kind of normal, quote unquote, normal therapy initially, sort of debunking myths
Right.
so that, the person starts to feel more comfortable and can sort of ease their way into a trance state. There's a lot of really unfortunate portrayals of hypnosis in the media and using stage hypnosis because in a sense they push, I mean, in order for, they push negative viewpoints of hypnosis, like, when somebody's on stage and they make somebody do something stupid, or it seems like it's against their will, right? But that's not really helpful because in a therapeutic context, hypnosis is basically helping the client or the patient use their inner resources to help overcome their own problems. And the therapist is just sort of a person to help guide that and
Yeah, you're that
facilitate the
you're that
process.
vehicle. You're that vehicle that's educating and teaching, what better
Mhm.
route to take in order
Exactly.
to be able to quit. Absolutely. So can you share some of the techniques that you use in your practice to help some of your patients?
I mean, I could verbally talk about some
Mm-hmm.
of the ideas. Yeah, yeah. So the 10-year experiment is a very common thing that I use almost with every single person where I get them to
Like, this is your life path if you continue on the in this
exactly,
direction. Yeah, that's a good way.
exactly.
That's the
Yeah,
fear. So that's
right.
implementing fear, right? Like
Right. That's showing them what's a very real, and I'm not even telling them what's going to happen. I get their own mind to generate what would happen if they continue down that path. And of course, the positive spin on that is what will happen when they start to say no to cigarettes and how much better and healthier their life would be. So I do like it's like a fork in the road technique.
yeah.
One path is saying yes to cigarettes, what will happen? And then one path saying no to cigarettes, what will happen then?
And
Um,
how long do your sessions normally last?
so the main core session is 2 hours, and then I have another subsequent session after that, which is a 1 hour session. Most of the work gets done in that time. And there's quite a lot of different patterns because at the end of the day, like the first thing that I need to do is first get rid of all those myths around smoking. Like what are the common myths that keep people smoking and get that out of the way. And then what I do before any sort of hypnotic trance experience, I start to really get them to start viewing smoking and cigarettes as something separate from themselves. So I know this is not really what you're asking, but smokers think in their mind that they are fundamentally a smoker, like quote unquote, they identify with the process of smoking. So
They
they,
identify as a smoker.
as a smoker, right? But that needs to change, right? Because what do smokers do? They smoke,
Right.
right? So we need to make sure that they no longer view themselves as a smoker and they see cigarettes as something fundamentally separate from themselves. After they do this, then quitting smoking, when they're able to actually see themselves fundamentally as separate from smoking, then quitting becomes much easier.
And how long can that span take for you to effectively get somebody to distance themselves from that association?
Ideally, or like on average.
On average, ideally, what would be what is the common denominator that you see that you could
Mhm.
say this is kind of like, a common pattern that I see with the patients that come in to see me,
Yeah.
and how long it takes them.
Well, let's put it this way. I have for sure seen it happen incredibly quickly, and that's the brilliant part of not just hypnosis, but the process that I've learned from being able to split smoking away from them. I've had one of my clients go from smoking 40 cigarettes every single day to smoking
Jesus.
zero. He smoked zero cigarettes after the one session because he was able to, the way he put it, I like the way he put it, is to break the spell of smoking,
Hmm.
right? So in a sense, smokers are brainwashed in the spell that they sort of put themselves under because of tobacco companies and because of media. However, they came under that brainwashing.
Yeah.
He was able to break out of that brainwashing in just one session because of the process. He was able to see smoking as separate from himself.
And I would imagine also at that point when somebody's coming to you for help,
Yeah,
they've already made that subconscious decision where it's like, I have to stop and I just can't. So I need a professional or somebody that can really
yeah,
snap me out of this funk that I'm in at this point, or I'm going to die, I'm going to get cancer, I'm going to get emphysema, whatever the case may
yeah,
be, right? It's definitely
yeah,
not positive. And
right.
my God, 40 cigarettes a day, that person had no taste buds, clearly.
Probably, yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my God, that's insane. That's insane.
yeah.
So how many sessions normally typically does it take to get somebody to quit? Like where they're like, okay, we're done. I've cured you. I've cured you of your smoking.
Yeah, yeah. It's not really like me curing them, it's rather they are able to break themselves out of that chain. And I would say like 2 to 3 sessions, you can get pretty significant results, but oftentimes the main session is really where most of the work is done. That's
Hmm.
like a main 2 hour session where we just start really working at a deep level. Like I mentioned, first we break the beliefs, then we start to really distance themselves from cigarettes. I start to basically the way I do this is by using metaphors like seeing smoking as if it's a parasite, right? Seeing cigarettes as if it's an abusive partner, right? So like cigarettes are like a narcissistic abuser that's been secretly tricking them into staying in this poisonous relationship, right? So all that pattern that they already know because they've seen either maybe they've been in that situation before, even if they haven't, they know what that pattern is, right? Of being in an abusive relationship. Maybe they've seen it on TV or they've seen it in movies or whatever it might be. They understand at a deep level what that really means, right?
Right.
And nobody wants to be in that sort of a relationship with anything. So they start to get this sort of primal sort of like aversion to that
Disgust almost,
disgust.
right?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So nobody wants to be in that situation. So when I start to sort of match the pattern
Hmm.
of smoking with being like with a narcissistic abuser, then they're at an unconscious level, they're starting to pull away from that.
Right. And how do you do the sessions? Do you do them via Zoom? Do you do
Yeah.
them in person? Both?
Zoom. Yeah.
Zoom, everything in Zoom. And so how do you put a person under like that in hypnosis through Zoom? Like how do you do that? Like
As long as they have audio, it doesn't really matter. Nothing really
so it's
matters.
what? It's just you talking, you have music in the background. Like
No music.
how do you get a person in that trance state?
Well, I mean, there's many different techniques. It'll probably get too technical at this point, but I mean, it could be very simple. I could just tell the person to close their eyes. Obviously, I start to do many different things that, I've been trained to do over many years at this point. But yeah, it's not rocket science. There's no real difference between Zoom and in person.
Okay. And
I mean,
so
there
it
might be distractions that I might have to deal with, right? There's only so much I can control on their end, right? I can tell them be in a room where there's
right
no
by
distraction.
yourself, close a
Yeah.
door. Right,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. You so you have a setup already in plan
Yeah. Mhm.
so that it's most effective.
Yeah.
Um Okay, any other advice that you can give to someone because it sounds really easy when you're talking
Mm.
about it, right? Like the way that you're explaining it, you're like, "Come see me." And it's harder than that obviously because,
Mhm.
when I was younger, I used to, have a cigarette here and there while I'm having a drink.
Mhm.
It was just it was around more, right? It was more
Mhm.
socially acceptable than it is today.
Mhm.
And I've known so many friends that are heavy smokers that are smoking
Mhm.
1 to 2 packs a day,
Yeah.
and they understand that they have to quit because they they're not breathing right, like
Mhm.
the shortness of breath,
Yeah.
the bad breath, you name it, right? It's all
Totally.
negative, everything is negative associated with that, and they say, I'm gonna quit, that's it, I quit smoking, and then you see them a week later and they're smoking again.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to break the habit, it really is.
Well, it's really hard if you're using willpower, sheer willpower. Like I mentioned, like I've seen it happen recently where I knew somebody who quit, quote unquote, using sheer willpower. and now I see her again smoking, right? So it is an unfortunate thing, but when you use sheer willpower, it is the hardest way to quit. Because like I said, you're using your conscious mind to try to will your way away from something that's much more deep and deeply rooted in your unconscious mind. So using willpower is very challenging. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I've had 100% success with my clients because that would be a lie, and nobody has had 100% success. That being said, um, hypnotherapy is shown to be more effective than using nicotine replacement. And especially if you screen for motivation. Now, you said that people come to me when they're highly motivated, they try things and they want to quit.
I'm
And
ready
yeah,
to quit. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
that
ready to
is the
quit. Help me out.
ideal situation. However, not everybody is always so motivated, right? Some people might, this is just true when changing any behavior. It could be nicotine, it could be alcohol, it could be any other substance, it could be gambling behavior, whatever the case may be. If somebody is coming to try to change a part, almost across the board, a part of them will want to change, but a part of them won't.
Mhm.
So a part of them is very used to the status quo of being a smoker, and a part of them wants to change because they know they could see where this is going, but then there's this inner tension. Almost every single one of my clients will have that inner tension. If they didn't have any inner tension, then they wouldn't need me. They would just quit.
Right, right. My father was a very heavy smoker for many years, and it really beat
Yeah.
up his health.
Hmm.
And he did it through the fear that the
Hmm.
doctor was like, "Hey, buddy, if you continue in this direction, you're done. Like,
Yeah.
you're falling apart."
Hmm.
And two heart attacks later, right? That's what I'm saying. Like the fear, it's either like,
Right.
shit or get off the pot, right? At this point.
Yeah.
And he did. He was able to effectively,
Good.
completely quit smoking, drinking. He did it all like wham bam, all at once, you know?
It
And
can happen though.
I can't imagine how difficult that must have been for him
Hmm.
after he was 70 years old when he did this, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it was a lifetime of
Right.
smoking and drinking, and he just quit everything cold turkey. Um so with your patients that you see that you're, helping them affect, you don't use any other supplements other than
No.
hypnosis. It's just hypnosis and talking to them and mental therapy
Yeah. Yeah.
to get them to disassociate from the smoking. And what is your ratio if you had one uh of people that you've been able to effectively quit smoking?
That is a very tough question to answer because the only way I can answer that is by going back and checking in with every single person I've worked with. And
To make sure
actually,
they
in
can
order
quit.
to make it an accurate, it's very interesting because in order to show that somebody's properly quit smoking, they would have to either take a carbon monoxide breath sample or a nicotine blood sample in order to actually say that this treatment method is this effective at quitting smoking. Obviously, I don't have access to those things. I'm working with people around the world. Um, well, how I do follow up with them is by sending them a message asking them on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is completely a non-smoker, 1 is completely a smoker. Where would you put yourself at this moment in time? So now obviously I have a range of responses. Yeah, I mean that's tough.
50, 60, 70.
Probably like 60%.
Well, that's great. That's awesome, because like we go back to it. It's a habit. It's a habit. It's what you're saying earlier. It's like the pink elephant in the room. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. I'm thinking about it more than ever now
Mhm.
because I can't think about it, right?
Yeah.
Um, just to kind of like close off the podcast, one of the things that you talk about, which really kind of gives perspective to this disgusting habit of smoking
Hmm.
cigarettes is how expensive it is in your pocket because
Oh
you go and you buy a pack of cigarettes here and there, you don't really see it, but if you're
yeah.
a constant smoker where you're smoking a pack a day or even a pack
Mhm.
a week, it's thousands of dollars a year.
Yeah.
In the end, along with, destroying your health,
Health loss.
and shortening your lifespan, right?
Right.
Um, and yet people still continue to do it. So, what can you say to somebody that's listening right now that's scared that they can't quit? Like, what's the first step other than contacting you, but to get their mind flowing in the right direction so that they're ready to really listen
Mhm.
to all of your advice when they finally do make that phone call to reach out to you?
Like, what is the main piece of
What
advice?
is the main piece of advice? Like right now, I'm listening to you. I'm smoking. I've tried to quit before. I've been unsuccessful. I don't know how to do it. I don't want to call you and spend my money because
Mhm.
I've tried so many things already and nothing works, right? So, what advice can you give somebody or techniques that they can apply before reaching out to you because they're ready now to sit down and effectively, start doing all your therapies?
I would say that I would. It depends on the level of motivation. I'm assuming that this person has a high level of motivation to quit, which is great, which is very important because motivation is key. I would say write down your cravings, like write down what are your main triggers, so
Mhm.
you have a list. Then, when a trigger actually hits, give yourself a few minutes before you act on that tr craving. Close your eyes and imagine all of the negatives of saying yes to cigarettes. Not just imagine visually, but also tap into the emotions of that. Then, within just a couple minutes, after you do that part, then you reset and then you visualize all of the benefits of saying no to cigarettes long term and all the positive emotions tied to that. If you can do this within just 3 minutes, and then you can do whatever you want at that point. If you want to smoke, go ahead. At least you've given yourself space to decide and to really choose as opposed to acting on instinct whether or not you want that cigarette. If you say yes, then that's your decision. But at least now you've given yourself a couple of minutes in between the feeling and the action. And also you've seen all of the things that can happen.
That's a good practice. I think, journaling, maybe
Mhm.
keeping a little smoking journal next to you and whenever you carry it around with you in your back pocket or whatever, and whenever you get a craving, kind of, write it down with the date so that you can even go back and say, okay, look, I'm getting better. I've been able to effectively kind of calm these cravings a little bit more. They're lasting a minute. They used to be 3 minutes,
Right.
now it's only 1 minute, right? So
Right.
you can kind of gauge it that way. Vikram, how can someone that needs help contact you?
Yeah, I mean, I have a social media presence on TikTok, YouTube, and on Instagram, which is relatively small. I think TikTok is by far the highest. So if you add me on TikTok, what is my name? One second.
I'll go ahead. Once I post
Yeah,
our podcast, I'll go ahead in the comment section, type in all of your social media links along with your
perfect.
email address. So
Yeah,
anybody that is ready to make the leap right now with you can contact you. And you do say
perfect.
that the first session is free. Did I read that
First
correctly?
session is free, and after the first session, I talk about my actual full program, and I with my full program, I usually talk about this on the session, but I offer 30-day money back guarantee because I want the person to get as much value as they possibly can, and it's just you can't lose with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
So as far as your TikTok, what's the name? I mean, I could look it up
yeah.
as well and put it on there, but
Vikram Mano 92, all one Vikram Mano 92.
okay. Okay. And then you say you're also on Instagram and you have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, the YouTube
Okay.
channel, I put a few longer form content on my YouTube. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, the content is kind of universal across platforms. So if you have my TikTok right now, it's basically all of my content is on there. It's just kind of split. It has the same content in all three. But sooner or later, I'm going to start adding, more different kind of content on Instagram and on YouTube. So if you want to add those links,
I will. I'll add all of
yeah.
the links at the bottom in the comment section,
Mhm.
so that everybody can tune into your work. It's a great thing that you're doing. Again, this is
Thank you.
this is this is difficult and it's so easily accessible.
Mhm.
There's you can find cigarettes anywhere, right? And
Cigarettes, vapes now is crazy.
yeah, vapes and oh, okay. So no, I did not ask you about that. So what's worse, cigarettes or vaping?
I'd say cigarettes are probably still a little bit worse from my
Because of all the
understanding.
all the chemicals and additives that are in
Yeah.
there. But
Yeah, but vaping now it's what makes it more worse is that it tastes so good and it's being marketed to
right,
children at a much higher rate,
yeah,
and you can do it indoors way easier.
right,
So,
right.
there's pros and cons, right? I mean, they're both terrible. And I don't know too much about the aldehydes that are in vapes, but I heard that they're pretty rough on the
What is it?
respiratory.
What is it that they say now that you get? It's popcorn lung that you get
Yeah, yeah,
from
yeah.
vaping, which is so dangerous. I know a girlfriend that her son's friend,
Hmm.
teenager, was vaping, and within a year
Hmm.
span, he like practically almost died, right? Like I don't know
Wow.
what it was if he got emphysema, but it was
Mm.
bad. He was in a coma in the hospital and everything, and
Whoa.
it was just associated with vaping. It wasn't
Yeah,
drugs. It was just vaping. So that's, that's
scary.
powerful. That's really powerful. You think, like you say, because you can do it indoors and it tastes like, Fruity Pebbles when, because
Hmm.
they have so many different flavors and it doesn't give you bad breath and but it's destroying your insides at that point. So, okay, Vikram, thanks again for sitting with us.
Thank you.
Really appreciate all this material, all this
Mhm.
information, very important. Again, I'll put all your information at the bottom of the comment section in the YouTube
Mhm.
channel. For everybody that's listening, I thank you very much for your support. Please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel for amazing guests and amazing education. And everything here is to help and elevate all of us, right? So thank you again. And
Thank you.
Vikram, have a great rest of your day, okay? I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah,
And
appreciate it.
I wish you the best with all your work, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Okay, bye-bye.